Hello guys, how are you today? Before we start our lesson, I want you to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell for more videos. And if you have any comments, please write them down. Thank you. Today we're going to start our lesson. We're going to talk about food chain, okay? Food chain is an illustration that shows how energy is passed from one living or thing to another. Like it starts here with normally with the producer, and we call it these producers are normally green plants. For example, in this picture it is the grass, okay? So it starts with the producer and ends with the tertiary consumer. So here these are the producers, so green plants are the producers, and then we have first consumer, and then second consumer, and tertiary consumer. Let's look at the next. Food chain is a chart showing the flow of energy from one organism to the next, beginning with a producer. As we said, that producers are normally they are plants, okay? They are plants, and they obtain their energy from sunlight. So the next um, the next animal that feeds on the producer, we call it first consumer. And there is another name for it. We can call it a herbivore because it feeds on plants. It feeds on plants. The next consumer is called the second consumer, which here in this case we have a songbird. This is the second consumer, which feeds an animal which feeds on another animal. And then we have the tertiary consumer, which is the hawk in this case, which feeds on songbirds, and so on. So this is the flow, the energy. This arrow shows the is an indication of the flow of energy or foods, okay? This is another example. We have here maize. Locust feeds on maize. So maize is the primary is it's the producer. It is, we call it the producer. Locust is the primary consumer and feeds. The locust feeds on this maize, so it is considered to be an herbivore. And then lizard feeds. It is the second consumer, and it feeds on another animal, okay? And then snake feeds on lizard, and we call it tertiary consumer. So this is another example. Let's look at this picture here. This is the maize here, okay? So we call it a producer because it's considered to be a plant, and plants obtain their energy from sunlight, okay, and make their own food by photosynthesis. All these we know before. Locust is a primary consumer because it feeds on the maize, and it is considered as an herbivore because it feeds on plants only. The second thing is the secondary consumer. For example, lizard, because it feeds on another animal. Tertiary consumer, for example, the snake, because it feeds on another animal. So this is the food chain, and the arrow shows the flow of energy. The arrows here show the flow of energy in the food chain. Let's look at these definitions. They are very important definitions in this lesson. Food chain is an illustration that shows how energy is passed from one living organism or one living thing to another. Food web is an illustration that shows how animals are connected in their search for food within the ecosystem. Green plants, as we call them the producers, can make their food and by photosynthesis, and the food is found in the food is made in the leaves. So it's a living thing that can make food with energy from sunlight, and we call them producers. Animals get their energy by eating another animal, and a living thing that needs to eat to obtain energy, we call it a carnivore. So an animal that feeds on another animal, we call it a carnivore. So this means it feeds on flesh of another animal. Mushrooms cannot make their own food, and they do not eat food. Instead, they get their energy by breaking down and absorbing dead organic matter. So they feed on dead organic matter. These types of living things are called decomposers. So decomposers feed on dead organic matter. A leopard seal eats fish and penguins. It never eats plants. Since the leopard seal eats only meat, so we call it a carnivore. A deer eats grass and plants found in its habitat. Since the deer eats only plants, we call it a herbivore. A raccoon eats other animal like crayfish as well as plant life. Since the raccoon eats both plants and animal, it is an omnivore. It's considered as an omnivore. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, please write them down. I can say only one thing finally. This question is very important. It comes always in exams. Let me tell you some of the questions. They normally bring you an flow charts, okay, and telling you to name one of the one producer in the food web, and you can of course you have to choose. For example, for producers, it has to be a plant, okay. Name one primary consumer in the food web. So it is this animal that feeds on the plant. This is what you're going to choose. Use the information in the food web to explain why panda described as an omnivore. So you have to say omnivore, they feed on plants and animal. What do the arrow in the food web show? It shows the flow of energy. So these are quickly our examples, and I hope that you understood today's lesson, and I hope that you understood it very well. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe, and if you have any questions, please write them. If you have any questions, please write them down in the comments, and have a good time today. Thank you.